Hi, my name is Toney, and this is my senior project, the PASS Companion Program. I've been working on this project for the past 10 weeks with my technical advisor, Dr. Yang. I want to begin by breaking down this project into an agenda. I want to talk to you about the background of the project, tell you where the problem came from, and why I want to work on it with a little example. I want to then clarify that why into a problem statement to tell you what I'm trying to address as the problem, or what I'm trying to achieve. The next thing I want to focus on is the scope, because the scope has undergone some pretty big shifts in the past 10 weeks. When I began this project, it was a little ambitious, and I'm going to explain that more in the scope slide. I want to talk about the current system being the PASS system, and explain its benefits and its downsides, and why I want to address those, and how I'm going to fix those. And the how I'm going to fix those is going to be explained in the methodology in two parts: what the Microsoft Access section does for the problem, and what the Microsoft Excel section does for the problem. I'm then going to talk to you about the implementation for this project. Once the companion program is finished, how are we going to get it out to the students, and how are the students going to use it? And then I'd like to end with my final thoughts on the project I spent the past 10 weeks working on. Talk about what I've learned doing it, and where I think it's going to go, and how it will impact the students here. So I'd like to begin the background by talking about class selection. Class selection as a senior is very important to get the right classes you need and get out in time. And make sure you do well in those classes as well. You don't want to overload yourself with too many high level of work classes. So when you're a senior in your very first quarter here at Cal Poly, you can select a maximum of 8 classes, and I've highlighted them in red on the flow chart here. Now, as long as you choose 2 of the classes that are with the blue dots, you can choose 3 of the classes with yellow dots and have a maximum of 5 to choose from. Well, when you have 8 classes to choose from and you have 5 to pick, you have a combination, and that's a combination of 56 potentially different schedules. Now, when you're looking at 56 potentially different schedules, it's no wonder that students could spend a lot of time trying to find the right one among the 56. To better illustrate that, I've got a graph at the bottom of this slide to explain why I'm working, not only explain why I'm working on this problem, but how it affects the problem statement. You can see that more than approximately 75% of the students spend between a half hour to an hour or more working on their schedule, finding that right schedule. And that really was the word the people I've surveyed used. They were looking for the right schedule to fit all their needs. So here's what I made my problem statement based on their replies and my input and my work with this project. Students spend a lot of time on PASS finding the right schedule, therefore reducing time spent and giving students more tools to find the right class schedule that not only fits their personal schedule, but also their graduation requirements is of great benefit to the student body. So the scope has been reduced quite a bit over the past 10 weeks, because when I began, I was both idealistic and ambitious in creating a perfect program to give to the school as my giving back, sort of. So the original scope went something like this. I wanted to deliver a fully developed system with the following features. I wanted to allow for 9 class choices for the seniors to choose from, so they could have 9 classes and put a preference for each one. I then wanted them to allow them to create a groups of classes and say, I'd only like to pick one from among these 3 classes for their own reasons. I then wanted to include a class editing system that the faculty could use to edit the database quickly and efficiently when it was time to switch to the next quarter for PASS. And then finally, I wanted to have a lot of test subjects and a lot of test runs to make this a fully finished project. I wanted to go all the way through the testing process to have a completed idea, a completed project. The new scope is the same as the old, except for a few things that have been scratched in order to meet the time constraints. The first thing is that there's no class editing system to edit classes en masse. There's basic data entry, which in Access is usually frowned upon because it becomes simple to screw up an entry in a database and then create problems every time that entry is selected. But because of the nature of this project and because of the nature of the table, the fields in each table are not terribly difficult to understand. Their class name, the section number, what days it's on, and what time it's on, and what type of classes, lecture, or lab. So I feel that it's highly unlikely that somebody who's inputting the values could really create a crucial mistake in those. And I've tried to find as many crucial mistakes as I can in my own testing, and it's been a little hard to make that just go bonkers. There's no video tutorial. So originally I wanted to include a video tutorial on the system that would help students who haven't used 312 or haven't used IME 301 in a while, so they haven't used Access or the Excel solver function. But I found that it's really a bit of excess. It's more than needs to be done, because students who are seniors should know how to use this stuff anyway, so they would be good to go even without that video. The program is still technically in what would be called alpha testing. When a program is made, it generally goes through 3 cycles. It goes through an alpha phase where it's fully functional and has undergone some level of testing by the creator, that being myself. I've done about 4 hours of testing with it. And then there's a beta phase where a large group of people will test the project and give small input and add changes and essentially make the project more user-friendly. And the project right now is user-friendly, but it definitely could be better with more testing. But I just don't have time for all that testing to create the project and make it work. So I decided to just simply complete the alpha phase, and let that be that. So here's the current system PASS and its benefits and downsides. Its benefit mostly is that it generates multiple schedules and can optimize based on several preferences. Generating multiple schedules gives students a lot of ideas on where they want to put themselves in the sections of those classes. And being allowed to say, I only want to take classes around the middle of the day, or I only want to take classes that are close together or far apart, really helps them find that right schedule that much better. However, it does have some downsides to it that I would like to address in the companion program to broaden the number of options and optimization choices that students have. You can't sign up for more classes than you'll be attending with PASS, which I intend to fix with these 9 class choices. You can optimize based on preference for any one class. To illustrate that a little, why that's important a little better, I've included IME 405 in this little graphic at the bottom. You can see here from the graphic that IME 405 is the prereq for 3 other classes. So it's important that you get it. But you can't tell PASS that I really want 405 unless you put 405 in. So with my new system, you would give 405 a value of 10, let's say, to say that you really want it. And the system would work with the other 8 classes to try and make 405 the best choice. Now you can't select based on class groupings, which was included in my scope. I want students to be able to put together a group of classes, because I know that there have been times where I've had to decide between 3 classes like IME 481, IME 405, and IME 420, which I know are classes that are very time constraints and require a lot more time than the unit cost would indicate to pick my right choice. And students may have other reasons for wanting to do this, but it's an optimization function that PASS didn't have that I wanted to include to give more options to the students. So here's how I went about solving that. So the first thing I did is I created a database in MS Access. The database I created had a couple of basic fields. I already described them to you previously. The class number, the section number, the days it was on, the time it was for each section, and then whether it was a lecture or a lab. And I had created 9 drop-down menus where they choose these classes and 9 text boxes where they put in the value for those classes. And then MS Access, when you say go, meaning I would like my schedule now, it would run 135 total queries to find all the time conflicts between all 9 of those classes, and then would compile them as a large section of queries. These queries would then be read and transferred to a new table in Access as constraints for the solver function in Excel. The constraints would then be set into the table with additional constraints that I would call basic constraints based upon assumptions, which I'll explain in the next slide. So the basic constraints that are based upon assumptions are assumptions like this. A student will never sign up for more than 16 units, not only because it's not possible to do until after everyone's turn has passed in the class operation system, by which point your class choice would mostly be obsolete, but also because that's a lot of units to sign up for to begin with. A student will only sign up for one section of a given class. So I have constraints in there that say that a student will never take 2 lecture sections of 420, but I did want to include the lab section because that's crucial. They do need to have, it's required in fact, to take a lecture for 420 and a lab for 420. So I wanted to include those. A student will never enroll in classes which conflict. So that's the purpose of the 135 queries. They make conflicts that say that 2 classes that start at 2 p.m. and at 4 p.m. will never be selected simultaneously. A student will want to maximize their preferences. So a student will never say, I want this class and I'll give it a 10, and then really somehow mean that I don't want that class because I gave it a 10. They'll want to meet as much points as possible. So a higher point value will get them a higher class. Preference values can only be between 1 and 10 and only be whole numbers. And I did that mostly because when you go to Excel and you use the solver, it can get a little crazy if you start to do things like 2.25 as your value or 2.111111. It easily confuses the program, and I wanted to make this as error-free as possible. So how would I like to implement this once this is done? Now, when I designed this process, I wanted to pick something that was simple to use, which is why I picked Microsoft Access and Microsoft Excel. They're office programs that most students have on their laptops, and if they don't, they can come use them here at Cal Poly. So the idea would go something like this. When PASS was ready to go for students to sign up, the same day the faculty would send out an email to the senior level IE students that would say, seniors, this is your PASS companion program for fall of 2013. And they would use it to make their schedules at the same time they were using PASS. And then when the next quarter came around and PASS was updated, the database would be updated and re-emailed and say, this is your database for winter of 2014. The last thing I want to say about the implementation is that this is an optional program. They don't have to use it in the same way students don't have to use PASS if they don't want to. Now, PASS is designed to help you, just like the companion program is designed to help you pick classes. But if a student really wanted to, they could just flip through the course catalog and find times and figure it out from there. So some final thoughts on this 10-week project I've been putting my time to. The PASS program is a very long way from being what I would call complete, but it's definitely made great strides in that direction. When I imagine this project being complete, I imagine it encompassing not only senior level, but junior, sophomore, and freshman as well. I also imagine it being through that beta testing I was talking about, being easier to use. And ideally, I would like the solver function to work outside of Excel and just into Access to have a one-stop shop. But given the time constraints that I have and the amount of work I put into it already, it was just not feasible to do that within the 10-week period that I had. So I had to limit that constraint. But it's something that can be worked on for future senior projects and continue to improve the student's experience. Now, this project may not seem as urgent as redesigning a facility layout for Toyota or a supply chain demand for Boeing, or as much of an IE concept, but it is a problem only an IE can solve. It uses database management and operations research, both classes taught here at Cal Poly. And we had a lecture from Dr. Macedo in IME 481, we being the students, where Dr. Macedo basically explained to us that what engineers do is we solve problems in our daily jobs. And my daily job right now is a student. And as a student, this is a problem that comes up for me every quarter, and this is something that I wanted to solve. In fact, this project began for me not when I was a senior, but when I was a junior in my winter quarter. I had just taken IME 301, and I wanted to find a way to make the best schedule. So I used what I had known in 301 and looked up all my classes and found all the time constraints for every one. It was a time-consuming process, to say the least. It took me about 3 hours to finish the whole thing. But I was one of those students who wanted the right schedule, and I found it. And I wanted to give that to the other students because I thought that PASS was lacking in some areas, and I've done that. So lastly, I just want to say thank you for looking over my senior project today and looking over my senior project that I sent you 10 weeks ago as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.